There's a lot going on. Sometimes it's a mirage or a mixed bag of stories. On one hand, there's success story from security agencies and doing their work, like the abductees that were rescued recently, and then on the other hand, you see another set of attacks happening. So it's a mixed bag of stories wherever you look at all of these things. But the most important thing right now is to the effect that we are making good progress with the issue of state police. The president has now officially transmitted the constitutional amendment that will give way for some of these things that are necessary. So the way it works is that the bill will go to the National Assembly. It will be passed by the National Assembly after all the clauses have been considered. And when all of that is done, it has to pass through the State Houses of Assembly, where 2/3 of the Houses of Assembly will have to also endorse the passage. And then it now becomes a new part of our ground norm. I've always say, let's be ready for the abuses that will come with state police, because with the greatest respect, some of these leaders are not mature enough to manage power. Sometimes the little they have, you see how they handle it. Some outrightly fail, some go beyond their power limits and all of that. But at the end, Bukola, is for us to be able to have a safer country. You know, when we're having a conversation with Mr. Shea yesterday, he said something that I kept processing afterwards when I asked him that question. I said, why the people don't have a problem? The security agencies know their work. The security agencies know what they are doing or what they should do, but the political will is lacking in most times, or sometimes even political interference. So I was making a case that the government need to show cause why people should support them. And he said, look, who is most affected when it comes to insecurity? It's the people. How many of the big men do you see being kidnapped or being affected by some of these things? So it begins to give impetus to the argument around state police, community police, and all of that. I think it was one of the leaders of the security agencies, I think the DSS that talked about, this was reported, talked about community police, or community being the first line of defense in that sense, because it's important for all of us to be able to put hands together to secure our country. We know the levels of quote-unquote irresponsibility that can come from government, but if we are the ones most affected, we need to look for a way to see what we can do to protect ourselves, because the incidence of killings and mass abduction is not acceptable.
Indeed, and you know, perhaps because of that concern about state police that you've always expressed,
I will keep expressing
that is not just a concern within the fourth estate of the realm. It also appears as if it's one expressed within the National Assembly as well, because if you listen to the Senate President yesterday, after speaking on President Tinubu's transmission of the State Police Bill to the Senate for automatic consideration, he left a curious and compelling message, one that would make you do a double take for governors. He said, and not quoting him copiously now, that the governors should not leave a state police that they themselves would be afraid of when they leave office. And that was quite instructive, and a message for the governors to reflect on, because besides the need for the Constitution to be amended to accommodate powers for the subnationals to be able to provide intervention in the area of state police and to address our growing insecurity challenges, there is also that very real worry that this could be left to a lot of abuse, especially during elections, perhaps to come against perceived political enemies. But we hope that that is not the case, and as much as possible perhaps we'll be leaving the subnationals the benefit of the doubt, that this will go on well. But then it's also interesting that the president is giving this all of the push that he should, because don't forget that the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, had provided assurances that the House of Reps would give accelerated hearing to the matter of constitution review for state police, and in fact I think it passed second reading at the House of Representatives overwhelmingly in a vote of about 289 to about 44 or thereabout. And so the House, the National Assembly on its own had been working assiduously to ensure that the State Police Bill, amendment to the Constitution, gets accelerated consideration such that we can have a document. But of course, it's going to form part of our conversation today. And some of the questions for me would be, what measure of powers would the governors now be able to wield? What would be the outlook, in terms of structure of state police? And we'll be asking some of the experts who should know, who will be weighing in on this and helping us to understand, in the absence of, having a preview of the framework, in the bill that is being worked upon, what should it look like, and how do we guard against abuse in the structure, in the matter of state police, and when it becomes tangible, as a national security outlook in our current security architecture. But, Jeffrey, what is also important to note is to commend security operatives for what they're currently doing, the intervention they're providing, regardless of all the challenges. We see, the cache of arms intercepted and displayed in Kogi State. We see the neutralizing of a bandit leader in Kogi State in the last couple of days. We see the rescue of women and children, predominantly also in Borno, in recent times. Now, if the security operatives could achieve this feat amid the challenges that they currently have, and speaking of which, I can't help but remember the conversation with the senator from Kebbi State on our sister political program yesterday, when he did confirm what has been reported earlier, that the budget allocated to the armed forces, only 10% has been operationalized in its capital component. So in spite of those challenges, our security operatives are still able, to achieve the feat that they currently are achieving. How much more if they're giving the wherewithal, all of the resources that they require, then perhaps would have gone more than halfway in the fight against insecurity. And the threat that these non-state actors who have turned Nigeria into a killing field, the threat that they pose is still very, very real. It is not yet Uhuru as far as the fight against insecurity is concerned.
Yes, I know we're expecting those children to be released. We're praying and hoping. I'm sure things have been done. Because I've always maintained that, yes, there are saboteurs within the rank and file of security agencies. There are issues of budgeting. But in all, these guys know what to do. If the politicians who are leaders of our country give them all the support they need, by all the support, the funding that is required, the free hand to do their job, I don't think anything is in doubt. They have their issues, and we know what those issues are. But right now, I'll continue that call I made yesterday, that I'm looking for a way the president will make some very dangerous pronouncement, like close this Operation Safe Corridor, lock it up, at least for now. After all, he said it. It's not in perpetuity. Let him just end it. And then go gun blazing on these guys. Go gun blazing. The state must not lose the monopoly of violence to non-state actors, whatever shape they come with, whether they are bandits, terrorists, kidnappers, whatever names and shape they come with. Of course, the politicians have taken turns to say after the election there will be this. So it's almost with the words, even with the words from the president, who I referred to, who talked about that conversation, who made that statement when he met with the people in Plateau. It's clear that they know who, or they may have an idea who sponsors some of these things. And politicians may not necessarily be innocent. Some of these politicians, I should contextualize that properly, because at the first time they say it was APC people. I remember Bukola, that it was APC that was responsible for bringing Boko Haram. That's why even Kashim Shettima said they were saying he's the leader of Boko Haram at some point. Now we've come to this point. They are alleging that the opposition is also responsible one way or the other. Look, I don't care what you guys want to do with your politicking. I don't think Nigerians really care. Politic without involving all of these issues around national insecurity. There are places that play high-level politics without making the country unstable. The kind of conversation I want to have is policy against policy, counter policy against counter policy, economic, all kinds of policy, not the lives of people used as a means to, as a sacrifice or as a means to make the country ungovernable so that you have a point. That is if the politicians are responsible or they are at least what they are taking turns to be responsible for feeling instability and insecurity. It is totally unacceptable. It is totally unacceptable. It's not acceptable. So
while it's unacceptable,
we must be against it.
Why is it unacceptable, to politicize security at the expense of, lives that are at risk every day? Those who have been killed, who have been maimed, those whose lives have been destroyed, those who perhaps never recover from, their family members having been tortured and killed at the hands of kidnappers. It is also instructive. It is important to read between the lines and try to find out what the politicians are saying, behind what they're saying, and they're not coming out straight with it. Because if they're saying that, the opposition is responsible for insecurity, then they know something that you and I do not know. And so that itself should be probed. And
who probed them, Bukola? When the president sat down with leaders and said, don't allow your, quote unquote, your state to be used as a killing field. Because all of these guys are doing these things because they don't want me to campaign. But I will campaign for re-election. That is the president. The Senate president, the number 3 man, came and said, I always refer to this in on record, said, don't worry.
Once the election
is over.
So what does he know that we do not know? The governor of Edo State also said, why are you indulging in kidnapping? Kidnapping and insecurity would not stop the president from campaigning. What does he know? Who are those responsible?
That is why I'm saying they should let the security agencies, the military, the police, the DSS, the NSCDC, everybody who's here, to do their work. If there's a governor, if there's somebody in the presidency, if there's somebody anywhere who has a hand in whether it's the opposition or somebody in government who has a hand in insecurity in this country, let us bring them and put them on trial.
Public trial, as a matter of fact.
Put them on trial.
If there are sponsors within the government, then let Nigerians know.
Anyone will. So since
Nigerians reserve the right to know if there are people in government who are providing information, who are profiting from insecurity. The people of Nigeria, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, deserve to know who these people are. So put them on trial, get them prosecuted, and close all accounts linked to these people, and let Nigeria move forward. It is very, very important.
So whether they're in government, whether they're outside government, whoever is remotely or directly, but is a promoter of this madness that has subjected our country to what it is today, this thing has to stop one way or the other, or manage a lot more better than it is. So we're just, if you call it venting, is fine. If you call it just expressing ourselves, is fine. I am sure you are affected one way or the other. For the fact that it's happening in Borno or somewhere and it's not happening in Lagos, doesn't mean everywhere is cool in that sense. The security agencies will do their part, but all of us must come together to lend our voices and say, government, show some level of responsibility. Be more proactive. Be more stronger in your positioning. Allow these guys to do their work so that Nigeria can be safe for all of us, because juvenile politics, Bukola, I'm tired. I'm exhausted from juvenile politics. By now, I want to be seeing fireworks of idea and counter ideas. Let us come together and make our country great. Bukola, what else do we have to talk about before we jump on the papers?
It's still security related, and the Lagos State Police Command, on the last 24 hours was able to intercept a vehicle carrying a cache of arms and, of course, uniforms, camouflage uniforms that we usually know with the Nigerian army. The truck was allegedly conveying military uniforms to the southeast. 47 sacks of military camouflage and 80 cartons of suspected illicit substances were intercepted along the Lekki-Ekpe axis in a major intelligence-led operation by the Lagos State Police Command. The police commissioner who addressed journalists on Tuesday said the operation was allegedly conveying the military uniforms to the southeast, and 4 suspects have been arrested in connection with this incident, and they're currently assisting investigators in efforts to identify and apprehend those behind the importation. Now, that also, leads us to the matter of insecurity, where we see these crimes being perpetrated by bandits who are in military camouflage. And so, where is the source of funding for this? Where do they get this military camouflage? Where do they get them from? Who is sponsoring them? Where do they get? And the fight against insecurity has always been linked to the perpetuation of the crimes. Really, have always been linked to serious use of hard drugs and substances, because these guys cannot do most of the things that they do when they're not under the influence. And so the supply chain for this also must also be probed and investigated. And how do they get the arms? The what do they call it now? The Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons often provides intervention in these areas and speaks, and advocates for the closing of the links to the supply of illicit arms and light weapons. But much more than that, the sources of funding must also be discovered, because if that is not tackled, it will be tantamount to addressing the symptoms and not the root causes. So where is the source of funding of these small arms and light weapons? And it's a very scary thing when these bandits appear in this military camouflage, because more often than not, those who are unsuspecting, the vulnerable targets, mistake them for security operatives, and then they fall into the arms of non-state actors rather than those who should be protecting them. It's really scary, Jeffrey.
For me, that's why, Bukola, I'm saying anybody who is, these are the small fries, the ones that are caught. These are just like the errand boys, per se, the foot soldiers. Who are those
Absolutely.
behind these
them?
things? Trust me, the government knows, whether those people are in government or the outside government. So let's say it again to the federal government of Nigeria. Nobody will take your fight against insecurity and terrorism seriously until you get the big guns out, whether through sanctions, through, I don't know what is used in these measures, but what the average Nigerian will prefer is bring them to book. There is no way they don't know. This is government. They know who is responsible. No matter who, government as a government, business, whoever those set of people are, we must find them and bring them to book and stop this spate of insecurity that we're dealing with. All right. Well,
and security happens to be our first conversation this morning.
Yes, exactly. So,
yep.
I was just smiling because I saw an sister station where I think one of the aides to the president is being quoted to say that the level of hunger Nigerians are complaining about, he has not seen it. These are the things that makes me angry, Bukola. These are statements that piss me off, and sometimes I feel like going gun blazing, but for my professional ethics, I will just keep cool. Because these are the things that makes Nigeria not to have interest in supporting government sometimes, because of the mixed messaging. June 12th, the president recognized the level of hardship. The speech is there. Go and read it if you've never seen it, or go and watch the video. June 12th. 2 things he talked about. He talked about security. He understands that there cannot be prosperity without security. He acknowledged the shortcomings of his leadership, but he said he's doing something about it. He also acknowledged the degree of pain and hardship that the twin policy of government has brought on the Nigerian people and their businesses. And he's appealing for understanding. And then an aide to the president will come out and say, the level of hunger Nigerians are complaining about, you're not seeing it. Are you serious, sir? Because you increase salary by 100% from 30,000 to 70,000. There's a car I use. When we bought that car, it was 13,000 naira to fill the tank.
To fill the tank. How much do you fill your tank now, Jeffrey?
As at that time, this is just an average car. As at that time, I didn't really know how much fuel was, to be very honest. I just knew it was below 200. That time there was subsidy. So I just go to the fuel station, sometimes I don't even come down, and they fill the tank. Today, that same car, it will take me almost 90 to 100,000 to fill it. The 70,000 he's talking about, in today's dollar terms, it's about 50-something dollars. The 30,000 he's talking about, in yesterday dollar terms, was about 60-something dollars. So these are things that makes Nigerians angry. The president is saying one thing, his aide is saying the other thing. Guys, just put your house together. Don't piss Nigeria off. They're already angry by coming to say the level of hunger the Nigerians are complaining about, you're not seeing it. Are you serious? Don't get us started.
Jeffrey, now that you mention it, it makes me remember the conversation on our sister political program yesterday, and that's why it's important for Nigerians to interrogate most of the commentary that come from politicians and try to read between the lines and find out in whose interest is, whatever subject in contention actually is. The senator representing Kebbi, I wonder if it's Kebbi South or North yesterday, has defected to the ADC from the All Progressives Congress, citing unfair treatment from the party and, questioning why he was disqualified in the first place, and of course referring to the promise made by Mr. President that all the members of the Senate would get automatic tickets. Now, one of the things that the senator said that was quite compelling for me was that after they subjected themselves to all manner of wrongdoing, only for them to lose out like this, without quoting him copiously now. And so he's admitting, that the Red Chamber, members of the Red Chamber subjected themselves to all manner of wrongdoing just to give the president the moral support that he needed to succeed. And so he didn't get the ticket after all and has now defected to the ADC. And he went ahead to talk about how only 10% of the security budget allocated to the defense has been operationalized, and that is part of the problem, bedeviling insecurity in the country. That's part of the reasons why we're seeing this lack of progress, or relatively very little progress in the fight against insecurity. He also went ahead to talk about other things in Kebbi politics. But I'm wondering that if he actually got the APC ticket, would he spill the beans on his political party the way that he has? So, sometimes when, the odds are in favor of politicians, then you would not hear, anything about how whatever that was being cooked got burnt, in the house, because at that time it's favoring them. And so Nigerians must interrogate some of these issues. Is it in your own interest? If it's not in your own interest, then be prepared to make an informed choice at the polls. But sadly, that is not what happens oftentimes at the polls, Jeffrey.
Yes, so there's a campaign we need to start as Nigerians, and I'm ready to be at the vanguard of that campaign. The independence of the legislature. The independence of the legislature. Unfortunately, our legislature haven't lived up to the expectations of Nigeria. They can come and debate. Our good friends at Daramodu who come and debate back and forth. But just ask Nigerians whether they are happy with the National Assembly or their state. The State Houses of Assembly are the worst. That one is some of them, or I don't want to use most of them. I say some of them. They're just there as appendages, with the greatest respect. If we have them do their work, the executive will set up. That's the truth. That's why when military takes over a government, that's the first people they target, because it's called the People's House. You and I can gather and go and talk to the president or go and talk to the governor. They are representing us across constituencies. So that is the advocacy we must start to see, how we can make the legislature as independent as possible. Work for the people, not just being yes men and yes men passing every budget, everything that comes from the executive. But we'll take a break, and when we come back, let's tell you what we're doing today. We're talking national security. Cooking gas is super expensive. We're talking to the people who understand how it works. We're talking about the state of the economy. But first, we'll look at what the dailies are saying. Stay with us.